All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Here's one of my favorite books, and we're going to be talking today about the inner critic, also called the super ego. So, oh, we got a nice shot of my feet there. All right, let's. I always forget how it's an issue because it's just mostly made up, and who gets to be right? This is the reason why personality is the basis of all conflict. We're so certain that we are right because we've been hearing these same things from our superego our whole lives. And so the way that we operate makes perfect sense to us. And so then the way that other people operate doesn't make sense to us. And we're like, what are you talking about? So, that's obviously not correct. That's obviously not the way to be in the world. But it's not obvious to other people who are not our same type. All right. And another thing to think about is the idea that some superegos are what they call fat. So for types 1, 2, and 6, they have a fat superego. They're duty bound, right? Their superegos are particularly strong and can be very harsh to them. Man, some people's superegos just say horrible things to them. You're a loser. You're never going to amount to anything. No one will ever love you. Why did you just say that? You're such an idiot. Things like that. And it's just awful. That's not God's heart for you. That's not God's voice speaking to you. That's a horrible voice of condemnation. You know why? Because the superego is law-based. It does not understand grace. And so it has to go by these very stringent rules. It's a Pharisee. That's exactly what the superego is. And again, it has good intentions, but it's operating on faulty information. And we don't need it anymore. Now that we're grown-ups, we don't need all those particular little tiny rules, but we've grown up with hearing it for so many years that we identify with it. We think it's ourself, and we think it's the way that the world is or should be. But I'm just here to tell you it's not true, and there's such freedom and there's such grace available to you. Once you learn your Enneagram type, once you understand how the superego operates, that inner critic, right, that's criticizing all the time. And so whether you have a fat superego or a regular sized one like me, where your superego is actually pretty nice to you, but mean to everybody else, then you can begin to get free of it, and you begin to find your authentic self, and it just brings tremendous freedom and peace. You don't have to feel condemnation anymore, and you can again just become more your authentic self. And isn't that worth working at? Isn't that worth trying and doing? So what else do I want to tell you? Yeah, just the concept that I was just telling you about, which is that when you have this sort of skewed version of reality that you think is true, it messes up how you perceive God. It messes up how you perceive your own self. You have all these I statements that aren't necessarily true, right? Like, I am a loser, or I am particularly awesome, or I am right all the time in these situations. So that's not exactly objective reality, and it doesn't do anything to unite people, and it again skews your view of God because you will perceive God differently. Your perception of God has a similar tone to the voice of the superego or inner critic in your head, and that inner critic again it warps your perception of everything in the world, including your perception of God. And doing that is going to prevent you from, again, walking in the fullness of who you authentically are and having a deeper and more intimate and more real relationship with God based on who he actually is, instead of who are you perceiving him to be through this inaccurate filter. Okay. So next time we are going to talk about how to detect and begin to dismantle that voice of the superego or inner critic. There's some really cool practical daily stuff you can do to become aware of those voices and to begin to observe them and then silence them. They just become less and less a part of your life. So I hope that helped you. And you can check me out again on Facebook at Dearly Beloved Programs. You can check me out on Twitter as well, become part of the conversation and part of the community of our Dearly Beloveds, because that's the name of my company, Dearly Beloved Personal Discovery Programs. So until next week, blessings on your journey.